So what are the truths of science that nuclear physicists have failed to grasp in their singular pursuits? Great scientific truths are studied by the philosophy of science, the highest discipline meant to judge all others, including physics. As expressed by Kant, the modern founder of this discipline, on his epitaph, "Two things fill my heart with awe, the starry skies above, the moral law within." Kant was highlighting the two fundamental tasks of science. The first is to use practical scientific reasoning to help the welfare of mankind. The second is to illuminate science with pure reason by using a rainbow of 7 experimental and logic proofs of veracity that form the scientific method and discern between true and false theories. The first 3 of those proofs of veracity deal with the facts of reality. Since, as Einstein put it, science is not fiction and should never be concerned with any phenomena or theory of which there is not enough evidence. The first proof of truth is experimental validation. Any theoretical entity must be observed in quantities proportional to its effects. The ever-pervading presence of attractive vortices in the cosmos contrasts in this proof of truth with the scarcity of the Higgs boson, regardless of its pretension to give mass to all particles.
Higgs field is all around us, everywhere in the universe.
Now, those are rare events, okay, really rare. So, roughly speaking, a Higgs production is almost 1 in a trillion.
The second proof is the presence of a known, thorough cause. If a theory only explains part of an event, it is not truth. The Higgs does not explain the different masses of particles, only mass vortices do.
The mass is the frequency itself.
What comes out of these kinds of calculations is convincing evidence that this theory of quarks and gluons really does, and nothing else, really does account for the vast bulk of the mass of ordinary matter.
3. Since we cannot verify all the events that validate a theory, experimental evidence is proven by the opposite falsification method. One single experimental exception falsifies a theory. A single black swan disproves that all swans are white. If a single particle gets its mass from any other cause than the Higgs, that proves its pretension to give mass to all particles is false.
So there are lots of things in nature that have mass and have nothing whatever to do with the Higgs phenomenon. Let me give you an example. Imagine you had a box, and let's make that box out of extremely light stuff, the lightest stuff you can think of, but it's a box with good reflecting walls, and fill it with lots of high-energy radiation, bouncing off the walls but never getting out. It's made out of massless stuff. The photons are massless, they have no mass. The box we're imagining is made out of stuff which is exceedingly light, doesn't have much mass. But there's plenty of energy in there, lots and lots of energy. Well, E equals mc squared. And so this box will behave exactly as if it had a mass. We didn't need anything to give mass, just energy. That's all it took.
4. The universe is consistent and harmonic in all its parts. A new theory cannot, therefore, deny proven ones. It must correspond with all of them. The Higgs mechanism not only denies Einstein's concept of mass, it also fails the 3 logic proofs of the scientific method. Thus, it must be false. 5. Coherence. A theory must follow the logic rules of the language in which it is expressed. It cannot have errors or unproven assumptions like the Higgs mechanism does, where mass is sometimes negative, an absurd concept in itself, and the values for each particle are not deduced from theory, but added arbitrarily to the equations.
But he never lost his faith that nature, though difficult to understand, ought at the root to be simple and beautiful.
6. Occam's razor, or as Einstein put it, God is subtle, but he is not malicious. The simplest theory is truth.
Black holes are extremely strong vortices, and they pull matter in these swirling winds around them, a lot like a tornado.
The attractive power of vortices is self-evident, and a far simpler explanation of how a particle acquires mass. On the other hand, the Higgs mechanism is so complex that not even Peter Higgs could explain how it gave mass to the universe. To resolve this problem, the Science Ministry created a monetary prize to reward whomever could explain it best. The winner, a student at London College, came up with the surreal explanation that some particles are celebrities that attract the Higgs field more than other particles.
What I've read on the Higgs is, in my mind, very confusing. Here's the way I understand it. A bunch of reporters standing in a room, crowded room. And so me and President Obama want to make it from the entrance of this room to the exit of this room. So we go in, and what happens? Of course, all the reporters glom on Mr. Obama. And Obama over here, he just makes a beeline right to the exit door. So basically, with no inertia, I can make it to that door. Whereas Mr. Obama has a lot of inertia, a lot of mass. So this Higgs field affects one particle more so than another particle.
We must be able to come up with a more...
Well, when we see what they look like, we'll come up with a better analogy. Right?
Another analogy, yeah. Something involving cars or something.
7. The economy principle. The cause that explains more things is truth.
A single principle that would account for the baffling differences between the forces and the great variety of particles.
The Higgs mechanism appears in just a few particle interactions. On the other hand, the equivalence principle not only explains the dynamic transformations between vacuum energy and its mass and charge vortices, but it also makes them equivalent to the two ultimate principles of reality, space dimensions and time clocks, since the only difference is the way that humans perceive them. The mind freezes the energy of the vacuum into distances in space, and its charge and mass vortices into clocks of time that carry the information of the cosmos within the frequency of its cycles. Einstein's equivalence principle solved one of the paradoxes that started modern science, when Galileo realized that while the Earth's mass is in perpetual motion, the mind perceives the world as fixed in space and time. The human brain, in order to fit and navigate the information in its environment, reduced that perpetual motion to a static time clock with a frequency of 1 day. The same paradox occurs today between the quantum moving perception of reality and its cosmic static description. Both are equivalent, depending on the quantity of information we distinguish. The human eye sees roughly a single space-time continuum across the entire universe. Yet, when we observe space-time in great detail, it becomes the sum of infinite energetic quanta, which fill vacuum space and infinite time clocks, one for each cosmic mass and quantum charge that stores the forms of the universe. All that is needed to unify every physical entity in the universe with a single principle is to find the relationship between those two physical scales of space-time. And so Einstein dedicated the last years of his life, guided by the principles of truth and pure reason that define the scientific method, to the search for an equation that unified the microscopic world of quantum charges with the macroscopic world of mass vortices, an endeavor that to this day remains the final frontier of theoretical physics.
Unification. Unification.
But this 400-year-old quest for unifying answers about the nature of the universe has now been sacrificed in popular culture to the budgetary needs of the largest machines on the planet.
Everything would be massless. Everything would be massless. That's what we call the quantum. The God particle, Armageddon weapons in my arsenal.
In this regard, Einstein's defense of thought experiments over mechanical platitudes, as well as his opposition to war and the proliferation of nuclear weapons, contrasts sharply with that of the nuclear industry, which rejects both the pure and practical reasons of science. And yet, nuclear physicists are portrayed as the high priesthood of our technological civilization, not because they have provided any answers to the ultimate scientific questions, but simply because their experiments justify the creation of the biggest machine weapons ever built in history.
You take two things and you smash them together. You get a lot of stuff out of that collision and you try to understand that stuff.
Ultimately, the experimental methods used by the industry of atomic smashers reflect both a distortion of scientific truths and an obsession with energy-only experiments. In this regard, particle accelerators are not so much an element of modern scientific research, but rather an industrial relic of a Cold War that developed these machines to test new approaches to ballistics, which is the military art that studies how to increase the energy and range of its machine weapons.